Martin Dahlin a lot. You know the soccer player? Football, yeah. Henrik Lundqvist.
Henrik Lundqvist.
Yeah.
Hockey player.
Hockey player.
You like hockey?
I love hockey. I'm from Canada.
So what do you like most? MMA or?
Oh, no.
MMA.
Yeah. MMA, basketball. I love basketball.
Okay. You want to start? This MMAnytt.se, the Swedish website, speaking to the main man of MMA media, if we can call it that.
Thank you.
I think so. Can you tell us how it all started?
For me?
Because your career, it feels like you in like a short time have become the most famous and in my eyes the best interviewer.
Thank you.
In MMA.
Thank you very much. How it started, it's a very interesting story actually. I've always been a big fan of mixed martial arts. I remember watching the first UFC. Always been a fan of combat sports, boxing, wrestling, and when I was around 14 years old, I decided that I wanted to become a broadcast journalist. I wanted to be on TV with the microphone and all that. So I went to a school in the United States named Syracuse University, which is famous for developing great sports broadcasters. And when I was there, I actually had my own MMA and wrestling radio show. I used to interview the fighters and things like that. When I graduated in 2004, I went in the television production route, behind the camera. But 3 years into that, I ended up at Spike TV, which in the US airs the UFC, because I was a big fan of the UFC and I wanted to work on the broadcast. But then my first week there, I realized that it was a big mistake, that it wasn't the right place for me. So I decided to quit. They told me, biggest mistake of your career, you're gonna regret this, all this stuff. And they made me stick around for a month and until they found someone else. So during that month time, I was sitting in my cubicle, just kind of contemplating my career, and I decided that I was gonna go back to my journalism roots. And I was gonna go and start my own website and become an MMA journalist. And I gave myself 6 months from October of 2007 to April of 2008 to get noticed. And it's funny, my last day at Spike TV was October 19th, 2007, which is the 3-year anniversary is just in 4 days from now. It's funny how it's working out. So anyhow, it worked out, I got noticed, and then I just kept building myself through then. So it's really just been 2.5 years since I've been doing this, and it's been an amazing ride. It's like a dream.
A question, like when you do an interview with a guy, like Dana White or something, he's a huge guy of MMA. Do you rehearse?
No, nothing. I don't even think of the questions before because I feel like that makes me nervous. Yeah. So obviously, I follow the sport every day. I know what's going on, but I don't write anything beforehand. I don't prepare anything because I want it to be like a conversation like this.
Yeah.
You didn't rehearse the interview with me. You just saw me, and that's better because it's more conversational like. So
this is actually the first time in my life I'm doing like interviews with you.
Really?
So, yeah.
This trip?
So yeah, this trip.
And did you rehearse?
Nothing.
And it's better that way. And in time you'll get more comfortable and you'll be able to think quickly and things like that. So I think it's better when you don't stick to a script, because if you stick to a script, then you don't listen as much and you don't ask follow-up questions and things like that. Just like when you're talking to a friend on the side of the street, you're not sticking to a script.
So what do you think about the UFC event tomorrow? I mean, if you speak from a fan point of view, it doesn't seem like it's one of the biggest cards.
No, but the UFC is putting out a lot of events lately, so they have to spread it out. And in terms of draws, I mean, they sold out. It's the highest grossing UK event according to the UFC, and they have a lot of big names. They've got Michael Bisping, John Hathaway, Dan Hardy. A lot of people. Czech Congo is a big draw here, so that's why they bring these events. And now that they're growing, they have to sort of spread it out a little and cater to the local market. So I'm excited. It's my first ever event in Europe. I've been to Abu Dhabi, I've been to Canada, I've been to the US, of course, but first time in Europe here in England. So I think the crowd is going to be great. Over 18,000 fans. That should be fun. And it's always cool to watch guys who you've seen in the States who are just like, in the middle of the card, but now they come to their home country and they're treated like heroes. So it's fun to see how they're treated differently.
I usually like to analyze fights and memorize in my brain and see the future, how the fight is going to go out. Are you like that also?
Yeah, I watch everything. I watch everything and I think about everything. We could talk about any fight right now and I could, I've thought about who I think is going to win, and I live and breathe this. This is all I do.
Okay. Is there any special fight tomorrow that you're looking forward to?
I think, well, there's a few interesting storylines. I think, obviously, Dan Hardy, Carlos Condit, I think is going to be a lot of fun because...
What do you think?
I think Dan Hardy's going to win. Condit has had some travel issues. He got here late. Hardy's very comfortable here. I think he learned a lot about himself after the GSP loss. I think he's a little more aggressive, and I think he has the punching power. I think it's going to stay standing primarily, and I think he's going to win. I'm very excited to see John Hathaway. I think he's great. I mean, he just beat Diego Sanchez 14-0. Young, humble fighter. He doesn't believe his own hype, and I'm very excited to see him. I'm also excited as a Canadian to see Claude Patrick. He's very well respected in Canada. He's fighting James Wilkes, who's also local here. He's a Brit, so there's some interesting fights, and the undercard is interesting too. Cyril Diabate from France. I like that it has European flavor. It's fun.
Let's say Dana White now. You have got to know him personally. What do you think of him? Is there anything you can say about him? How is he for a person? Because, in the beginning of your career, was it easy for you to get an interview with him?
Well, you have to build yourself up and you have to get the recognition. But in my opinion, I think Dana is sometimes misunderstood. I think that oftentimes fans see one side of him, or they don't like something that he does or says or things like that. But you can't deny that what this guy has done for the sport. If he wasn't around, I don't think we would be around. You know what I mean? He's so passionate. And the number one thing that I'll say about Dana is we're not friends. I cover him, but he has never said no to me. Even after Abu Dhabi, when Anderson Silva, did what he did, he was very upset. Still gave me the time. And that's all I can ask for as a journalist. We don't have to be friends, like me, hate me. As long as he, gives me the time, respects me, and gives me 5 minutes of his time. That is all I can ask from him, and he has always said yes to me, and for that I'm very appreciative. Even we were in Oxford, and it was a big moment for him. He gave me 12 minutes of his time. Just a couple of days ago. It's amazing, to have that kind of access to someone like him. So I have a lot of respect.
Usually, recently I've never seen. You get all the interviews. And if I ask you about a special guy, let's say Chael Sonnen, have you been able to speak to him after the allegations?
No, he hasn't talked to anyone.
No.
And I don't think he's going to talk to anyone until he meets with the California State Athletic Commission on December 2nd. That's when he's first... I think it makes sense to a degree, I don't think he wants to say something, maybe gets heated, and then it's used against him in his appeal. So hopefully we'll get to hear more of the story on December 2nd, because I'm very curious to hear about it. Very, shocking news. But I'm not one to claim that he is guilty until we hear his side of the story, because there appears to be some holes in the story right now.
If I ask you a question that you can transform to Dana White, is it possible to do that?
Depends what the question is.
Okay, let's say if we talk about Fedor.
Yes.
Dana White has said many times that he believes that he is not in the top 10. He's not one of the, even in the top 5 or top 10.
Right.
And he's so certain that a guy like Brock would crush him. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the UFC has no money issues. They're a big company. And the M1 managers has said that they want to co-promote. The UFC doesn't want that.
Right.
But if he is so sure about Brock winning him, why not take them in, make a co-promotion for one time, make a lot of money, everyone would be satisfied, and let Brock crush him like he believes, and then kick him away of the UFC. Why don't you think he will take that risk when he's so sure? Have you ever asked him this question?
Well, there's a lot of reasons, and we have talked about it. First things first, the M1 global guys want to split the revenue from the pay-per-view, 50-50, right?
Okay.
How does that make any sense? People are coming to watch a UFC event, and the great thing about the UFC is you get 10, 11 fights on a card. Yeah. People like tomorrow night, some are looking forward to Carlos Condit, Dan Hardy, some are looking forward to Bisping, Hathaway, whatever. Because they are providing one guy, they should get 50% of the pie. I gotta be honest, neutral and everything, but that doesn't make sense to me. Dana White and the UFC have spent the last 17 years building their brand.
Yeah.
M1, they're doing their thing in Europe. They have one famous fighter, and he's a very famous fighter. But let's also remember, Fedor has fought on pay-per-view in the United States. He hasn't been a huge draw there. So for the UFC to give up 50% of the revenue, the gate, whatever,
for one event.
how does that make sense? Why should they? Dana White has said, and M1 hasn't denied this, that he's offered them a great deal. He allowed him to come out, wearing the M1 logo, all that stuff. He said even earlier today he flew out to some, undisclosed island to meet with him face to face recently, all that stuff. At this point, you could say in the United States, the UFC doesn't need Fedor because they're popular without him. People aren't, boycotting their shows. He doesn't want to sign. He doesn't want to sign. Do I see where he's coming from? Sure. He wants to build his brand. He wants to get M1 name out there. All that. Strikeforce gave him that opportunity, and he went with Strikeforce. But if I were them, if they are so confident that they could beat Brock and that Dana is wrong, why not take the deal for that one fight? Beat him. Now you're the champion, and now you have the bargaining power. But to just say no and to walk away, I mean, what's been the alternative? Well, since Pride has gone under, in the last, let's just say last couple of years, he's been Tim Sylvia, he's been Andrei Arlovsky, and he's lost to Fabricio Verdum. He's 2-1 since July of 2008. Alistair Overeem recently said that that M1 is ruining his legacy. He's not fighting enough. You know what I mean? And I don't think he's forcing the UFC's hand anymore. In 2010, he will have only fought once, it appears, and that was a loss. So at this point, the UFC is like, whatever. Why should we give 50% of our revenue to someone who isn't even a big draw in their eyes in the United States? I see both sides of the coin. But if you're asking me who do I agree with, I think that M1 should say, okay, let's just get him in there, get the logo out and all that. And then, if he wins, you're the champion, and now you have a lot of bargaining power. But to say no and walk away, then you're not taking a bit of that risk.
Last question. Who's your favorite fighter of all time?
To be honest, I really don't have a favorite fighter because I'm in contact with everyone I get to watch, and it's not because I'm trying to I'm not giving you a BS answer. It's actually true. I mean, there's some guys obviously who I like to interview, some guys who aren't that great at interviews, but I don't sit there and cheer and say, I hope this guy wins and all that stuff. I never do that. Honestly, my first favorite fighter was probably David Loiseau because I'm from Montreal, he's from Montreal, and he was the first big Canadian fighter to make it to the UFC. He had that title shot against Rich Franklin at UFC 58. Since then, fallen on hard times. But as a younger fan, the first guy that I was like, this is my guy, it was The Crow. But now, really, I really have respect for all of them because of how well they've treated me, the access they've given me, and I really appreciate and respect what they do. So I don't really have a favorite fighter, truthfully.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
It's been an honor.
Best of luck. You're a good interviewer.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.